Government versus Twitter. Here we are again. Started off the year with that, with the farmer protests and all of it culminating on Republic Day and the massive flashpoint that we had seen. Now it's about the manipulative media which had led to the Delhi police going to the Twitter office. And after that, Twitter today put out a statement saying that it is afraid for their employees' safety in the country. Twitter, it is believed, has also not complied with the new IT intermediary rules. Remember, they come into effect from 25th of May. That's yesterday, after 90 days of the rules first being announced by Cabinet Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad. We are being told that the government has come out with a statement. In fact, we do have a copy of that statement. So let's take you through some of the highlights in what the government says, that Twitter's statement is an attempt to dictate terms to the world's largest democracy, that Twitter refuses to comply with the very regulations of the intermediary guidelines, based on which it is also claiming safe harbor protection from any criminal liability in India. Goes on to say that India has a glorious tradition of free speech, and protecting free speech in India is not the prerogative of the for-profit foreign entity Twitter. It also goes on to say that lawmaking and policy formulations is the sole prerogative of the sovereign. Twitter is just a social media platform. It has no locus in dictating policy framework. Twitter has claimed that it's committed to the people of India, but ironically, the commitment of Twitter has been most invisible in recent times, and the government highlights with a few examples which it believes proves its case. The government also wishes to emphatically assure that representatives of social media companies, including Twitter, will and always remain safe in India, and there is no threat to their personal safety and security. Government condemns the unfortunate statement issued by Twitter as totally baseless, false, an attempt to defame India to hide their own follies. Let me go across to my guests who are joining us live on this edition of Startup Central, Mohandas, as well as Aarin Gupta. Thank you, gentlemen. Just a few minutes ago, we saw the government issue the statement. Mohandas, if I can come to you first. As far as the intermediary rules go, WhatsApp has already decided to legally challenge it, invoking the landmark Kutaswamy verdict in the Delhi High Court, talking about how the new rules are not constitutional. The government has responded. Let's see what happens in the Delhi High Court. But now that Twitter has not complied with the intermediary guidelines going by the statement of the government of India, what is going to happen next? Without safe harbor, Twitter will be open to so many libel suits, and you know that protection is a cornerstone of every social media platform's business model.
Absolutely. Since they're not complying with the law, they should be open to suit, civil and criminal, from anybody who thinks that they have been hurt, and there should be no protection to them. I don't see why we should mollycoddle anybody who refuses to open the law. Please remember, if an Indian company goes to the United States and tells the US government we're not going to obey a law, what will happen to them? Is the US government going to be considered, throw the book at you, right? I don't see why Twitter should do this in India. They must obey the law. And if they don't obey the law, they must face the consequences. That is very clear. The rule of law should prevail. Twitter cannot behave like a digital East India company. Twitter has been doing this all around the world. They set up their own groups to censor. They set up their own groups to edit. They decide what is good, what is bad. And I don't think they have the ability to decide. I want to tell you on a TV that Justice Clarence Thomas of the US Supreme Court, a sitting judge, wrote recently in a blog, it's time for the United States to declare the social media platforms as public utilities and regulate them, because they're having too much of power. They're using the power indiscriminately, and they're not using it equitably. They've got a political ideology at work, and they're not behaving in the proper social manner. And I think it's extremely important for the entire world to come together to understand. Remember, Google threatened the government of Australia that they're going to shut off Google. Please remember that, because Australia brought a law to say Google must pay the media for taking some of the media feeds. And Google said, we're going to shut you off. Now, please remember, India is a consumer and producer of apps. We cannot be pushed around and will not be pushed around. And I support fully the government on this. The freedom of speech and democracy is protected by a sovereign government of a sovereign country under law made by the parliament of that particular country and as decided by the Supreme Court of that country. That is the country under which we live. We don't live under the protection of Twitter, and we don't need Twitter to support our freedom of speech. That must be done by regulations and by the law. And as for Twitter protecting the freedom of speech, Twitter can turn you off, set you off. All your data is gone, all your feeds are gone. There is no right of appeal, there's nothing. And this new regulations, what do? They put in a grievance redressal mechanism, they put in an appeal process, they bring in transparency, and for doing all this, they give you protection and a safe harbor. It's a perfectly legitimate rule. Remember, in the United States, there is a law which says that since the social media platforms do not edit anything that is published, they're not a publisher, and therefore they have some protection, right? And there too in the United States, there's a debate going on actively that this protection must be removed because these social media platforms are behaving like censors and beginning to edit whatever content comes to the platforms. So I think it's time globally for a change. I'm very happy the government of India is saying obey the law. All of us have to obey the law. If you don't like the law, go and appeal to the courts. If the courts don't give a stay, you have to support the consequences. There is nothing, there is no true opinion on this.
Arvind Gupta, if I can come to you now. You know, the fact is that in the last 24 hours, what you have seen are two tech companies challenge the government. One has done it legally, which is, of course, WhatsApp, which is saying that your new rules are unconstitutional, that privacy is a fundamental right, as had been ruled in 2017 in a landmark verdict by the Supreme Court, and the traceability will take away that privacy. Then you, a couple of hours later, have Twitter giving a, to a global, speaking out globally from its headquarters in San Francisco, saying it's afraid for its employees in India. What's going on? Because, at the end of the day, what will this do for India's image globally?
Let me respond to that, Nayantara. It's a very simple, two different questions. First of all, there is a different, what Mohandas calls the East India cartelization. I think this is a digital cartelization from the US. They're all, operating. Twitter is trying to act on the freedom of speech side, and WhatsApp is trying to act on the privacy side. But let me try to respond to this. Number one, WhatsApp talking about privacy is as hypocritical as anything I have ever heard. WhatsApp is a free product. Anytime the product is free, you are the product. WhatsApp lives on our data and privacy, and that's the reason Facebook paid billions of dollars to WhatsApp to buy it, to acquire it. So WhatsApp talking about privacy is very hypocritical. It's laughable to an extent. And Twitter talking about freedom of speech when they have played the judge, the jury, the executioner in so many times. They've ignored the sovereign request of India. They've ignored legal requests from India. They have played a super country kind of a status in India. And they or their surrogates have always come out and said, Twitter is for freedom of speech. I think it's very one-sided freedom of speech. It's if they deplatform somebody, they don't give a chance to talk to the other party. They have a set of so-called fake or fact checkers who they rely on, who are themselves biased in most of the cases. So I think the whole purpose of enabling democracy and empowerment and people's voice that Twitter started with has become a very, very political platform. They themselves are biased with their political views. We shouldn't be surprised. They're a private company. They're owned by private investors, and they have views. And they've said it many times in the past. You've seen this in the US. You're seeing this in India. There is no platform neutrality in Twitter. Both these platforms talking about not abiding by the Indian rules and laws is very surprising. A lot of these platforms didn't have presence in India till about 2-3 years ago. Bulk of their users come from India, their revenues, their valuations come from India, but they continue to ignore the laws of the land, and that's with impunity, and they enforce their own policies. So that says very little about their ethics and their commitment to India. The other point I want to make is very simple. It's a very simple point that I've asked many times. This question paper is there. There's an exam paper that the Ministry of IT put out saying that these are the 10 things you should comply by. WhatsApp had a problem with one, Twitter had a problem with another one. Fair enough. Did they answer the other 9 questions? They've chosen not even to respond to the other 9 things, which are so simple to be responded to. Anytime you go to Twitter, they'll say, we don't have authority to do this in India. Please ask the US. So, what the government is asking for, a local establishment, a compliance officer, a nodal officer, a grievance officer, make it more accountable to India. But they're not willing to do that. So, I think I repeat what Mohandas Pai is saying, what the general sentiment of the people of India is, that they are acting as if, they are in control, their rules and their policies are supreme, and the laws of the country, laws of India don't matter at all. And so many times they have ignored lawful legal requests, and they continue to do that with impunity right now.
Okay. If I could build upon that, and Mohandas Bhai, I'm going to come to you first for that, and that is, isn't this also going to become a case when we talk of the IT intermediaries of who blinks first? We are also a land of free speech. We are a democracy. We are not going to be like, let's say, a China, which is going to black out. We will give the options to Indian users. I get that. It's not as if, a Facebook or a WhatsApp is threatening national security. But is it a case of who blinks first? The government has clearly said what its rules are. It'll have to engage, I would imagine, with these tech companies. The tech companies, need to be in India. If they're not going to be in India, where are they going to be? Where are they going to see their growth? A point that Arvind also just touched upon. They can't be in China. They want to be in India. So is this about a case where, we're just constantly seeing a battle between the tech companies and the government? And usually, it's between the same companies and the government.
No, I think some of these companies are going rogue all across the world, overwhelmed by their sense of power. They're beginning to feel they own the world. They're beginning to feel they can decide for the entire world. And they're all being captured by certain people. You can see what happened in the US elections, right? I mean, Twitter shut off the official handle of the president of the United States. Now, they could do it in the United States primarily because they're a private platform. And the law of the United States says very clearly they have an exemption being a private platform. But, they went against the official handle of the president of the United States, which I feel is wrong. He's the president, legitimately elected by the people. Till the last day he steps down, he's the president. You have to respect the president. You can disagree with him. You can say, we don't like you. But, he's the president of the United States. He's legitimate. You are not a power greater than the president of the United States because you don't have legitimacy. Anyway, whatever it is, you see, these people have an attitude. What is the attitude? We are innovators. We are above the law. We can do what you want. We are for society. They got this kind of a woke culture where we are bigger than everybody else. What we say determines how the world is, blah, blah, blah. And a typical arrogance. Of course, the team in India has no authority. It's just a country office, just some set of people are hired with no powers at all, that I agree. And this is how they operate all the one. A small coterie of people take the rules. Now see what Facebook did. They set up 125 people to look at appeals, etc. And all of them largely are leftists. Many of them are funded by one single person. We know who the person is, right? I mean, where is honesty? Where is transparency? Where is the openness? They don't have any dedication to democracy or to freedom of speech. They take political sides. They take, political positions. They favor some sides, and they do it. In our neighboring country, on some matters, Twitter has obeyed. In Germany, Twitter has to follow what the German law says. Now, the unfortunate fact is, let me put on record, Arvind, this year, India has been too lenient to them. Why didn't we set up to issue a privacy law in this country? Why didn't we have a data residency law? Why didn't we have a data sovereignty law? It's been the works of 4 or 5 years. We must have laws passed by parliament because the duty of the government is to protect us, citizens of this country. Now, this is a private company in MNC, welcome in India, fine, but they can't dictate to us. Our rights under the constitution has to be protected against them because they are not on our side. They are on their own side. They determine. And government has to protect us. And government does not pass a law. And now we have these intermediary regulations, which are not a substitute for the full law, because we want Twitter to keep our data in India. We want the government of India to have sovereignty tomorrow on the data. Tomorrow something the government does not use it properly, we can go to a courts and the courts will protect us. The courts will uphold the constitution, not Twitter. Who is Twitter for freedom of speech? Who is Twitter for upholding the Constitution? They are not the agency. They have no legitimacy at all. And if you look at the contract that is signed with them, how many people who come and support Twitter on TV today in this country have read the whole contract? I don't think anybody has read the contract. It's an unconscionable contract, one-sided, which all of us just click and say, okay, we want to be there and do it. And the power is being misused. So I think it's good that it's come to an head. India needs a law. The government has to step in. We need regulations. Citizens have to be protected, and the law has to be upheld. On the law being upheld and the rule of law, they can never be a compromise. That's an issue of national sovereignty, and all of us are with the government on national sovereignty.
Right. Okay. Arvind Gupta, the other point I want to ask you is it's the bigger companies, the bigger tech companies that have not accepted the rules. Facebook has said it's continuing to work. It wants to work in that direction. The WhatsApp has legally gone to court. Sundar Pichai has held a selective press conference. He's been quoted widely in the press today saying they will be in compliance. So we have to watch out and see what happens with Twitter. But on the other hand, yes, they are much smaller. It's maybe a drop in the ocean when you talk about this big tech and the FANG companies and all of that. The fact is that the homegrown Indian social media platforms have agreed. They have a lot less to lose, taking the same argument. But then why is this the case?
Well, the Indian companies, number one, are not influenced by the woke culture, I would say. They're starting off with the right mindset of, solving for India and then going across to the world. I think all these platforms, and I hope they stay that way, because Twitter started with that approach, and today I would say deviated from its original mission of enabling speech and empowerment. Let me put 2 points very importantly that Mohandas Pai brought out, but I think it's important. What is WhatsApp? First of all, they've not complied to the 9 out of 10 things. They've not even bothered to respond to that. But the 10th thing that WhatsApp is objecting to is really what the government has clarified. The government has clearly said we need, origination, whether it's for WhatsApp or for Twitter or for YouTube, for any other platform, when there is issues of sovereignty of India involved, foreign relationships, public disorder, child sex, child abuse. Those are the extreme cases where even the Puttaswamy judgment has said reasonable restrictions. So all this, all this posturing that these platforms are doing is actually, it's showing defiance, nothing else. Indian platforms, on the other hand, I think are new, but you will see the growth. I've already seen some platforms, they're growing very rapidly. You have to also remember, in the technology world, nothing stays forever. We all remember what happened to Hotmail when Gmail came about. Same application, same kind of tool, but some new features, some better storage, and Gmail took over, and Hotmail is really, really rare right now. So I think search engines themselves have shown that. So this is hubris has set in, I think, for Twitter, and to a certain extent for WhatsApp. Telegram is challenging it very, very rapidly, and so will others. So I think India, why they are afraid of doing certain things in India, because India is really leading this digital revolution as consumers, as makers. And the moment certain things happen in India, a lot of other countries are watching what India will do. Brazil, UK, a lot of developing countries, a lot of African countries. So I see a reason, if I'm Twitter or if I'm WhatsApp, to panic, because if they comply here, there will be a host of other nations asking for similar things.
Right. Okay. I would imagine that we're going to see plenty of drama in the days to come. Let's see how all of this pans out. The government, of course, has taken strong objection to what Twitter is saying about safety of its employees. The apprehension overall also has been that, okay, the intermediary guidelines, can they be used by a government with vested interests or wrong interests to try and figure out who the originator is? But at least the courts have been invoked. So let's see what happens in WhatsApp's case. In Twitter's case, we saw this kind of drama play out earlier in the year as well, when, of course, after a series of meetings, some kind of a solution had reached. So in this case, let's see who blinks first. Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of Startup Central. It's always great to have both your views.